Hi, this is Dr. Kimberley Linert, and you're listening to Incredible Life Creator Podcast. My guest today is Terri Crosby. Terri Crosby is a relationship coach, writer, and speaker with a private consulting practice for individuals and couples. She believes improving how we relate to others starts and stays with ourselves, and that it takes one person to change a relationship. Welcome to the podcast, Terri.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, so let's start out by you telling us a little bit about you, where you grew up, how you got to be where you are today.
I a farm in Northwest Iowa, and I was part of a fairly big family from Paulina, Iowa, and so it was just a typical farm family. Lots of work to do and that kind of thing. And then I went to Iowa State University and studied child development. And then I was just always fascinated with anything to do with intimate relationships, friendships, connections with other people. So that's kind of how I got started. I was part of the New Age movement in the 70s and 80s. And yeah, I just dove right in.
Got it. So when you graduated from college, what were you doing then?
I actually started out by working in preschools because I had a degree in early childhood, development, that kind of thing. So I did that for a while, but then later in the 70s is when I started the relationship work.
Okay, so you've been doing that for a long time then.
A long time. A long time. Yes, very much so.
Is there a big difference between preschoolers and adults when it comes to relationships?
Well, it's just good to know about the preschool thing before you even, I think honestly, I went to college to try to figure out where everything began, like how does all this big dance that we do together, how does that begin? So it was a nice foundation.
Yes.
Yeah.
And is there experiences you had in your life that caused you to be interested in relationships? Was there something good, something bad, something that happened that you're like, oh, I really need to figure this out?
Well, yeah. The thing I remember most about my childhood was sitting at the dinner table and studying people. I'm not sure very many kids were doing that, but I was. Mm-hmm. So I would watch the interaction between my mother and my father, and I'd go, is he listening to her? Why isn't she standing up for herself? I would sit there and think, and then I would watch the other kids in the family. There were 5 of us, and then later there were 6. But anyway, I would watch their faces, and while they picked at their mashed potatoes or whatever we were having, and their green beans and whatever we grew in the garden, I always just wondered what they were thinking. Like, were they part of the conversation? Did they care? I just was very fascinated with people. So
interesting.
That's mostly, and watching my grandparents with, like, my father's mother, like watching him with his parents. I really admired how far he had come from where I thought they were. They were very conservative Quakers and very proper, no music in their house. That was too much for Quakers, apparently. But my father had made the decision that all of his children would have access to music if they wanted to. So I admired that about it. So I watched that, and I watched my mom and her parents, and she had a big family. So
now, when you say Quaker, I'm sure a lot of people have questions like, so how was that growing up in a Quaker family compared to the rest of America?
Well, I think it was really conservative and really protected and very kind. My Quaker community was my main community. That was who I related to the most. Mm-hmm. And the kids at school were much wilder than I was. I can tell you that for sure. I couldn't go to the dances. They did, I stayed home a lot. And so it was a very quiet, very conservative sort of situation.
Great.
Yeah.
So growing up, what kind of things did you enjoy doing since you weren't really going to these wild dances? And I can relate, my
But
parents didn't let me, I'm
I
Christian.
see
They would not let me go
they
to
would not.
dances.
Um, helping at home. I love to read, so I would find things to read. I spent a lot of time with animals.
Mhm. Do you
Yeah.
have pets now?
I have a dog, but I've always had pets. Yeah.
Hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
So they
Yeah.
add a lot of joy
They
to
do.
our lives.
Yeah. They remind you to smile for all kinds of reasons.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then, you talked about music. How is that in your life now? Is there certain kinds of music that you really enjoy, or that, how do you use your music? Is it just for enjoyment?
It's really for enjoyment. I sing for enjoyment. My favorite kind of singing, if I could have anything, if I could just have snap my fingers and do this, I would go to the Washington National Cathedral every day, and I would put myself in there in one of the lower chapels, St. Joseph Chapel or wherever. There are several chapels in the lower part, and I would sing improvisational prayer. You make It's just the most beautiful thing. It soothes anything the matter with you.
Wow.
Yeah,
Would
that's what
you
I would do.
feel comfortable singing a couple bars just to give us an idea? I know I'm
Well,
putting you on
it's
the spot. I didn't ask you this
well,
ahead of time.
no, and it's just it won't it you have to be in a cathedral for it to really, because
Got it.
but what I would say though is if I sang something so simple as three notes in a cathedral, what that does is it reflects back to you so effortlessly, and so you don't have to make you don't it doesn't it's no work on your part, and so you can just make it sound like you can just do a really simple thing,
Mhm.
and you go and it sounds incredible in a cathedral, and it sort of showers you in the beauty of sound. And so it's like taking a bath in the very best way, um, in who you are and what you sound like, and how your heart feels. It's just the
Oh,
most gorgeous thing. I think this world would be an entirely different place if we could take advantage of things like that.
yeah. As you're speaking, I'm getting goosebumps and I'm feeling that ah
Yeah,
what an experience,
yeah. And when
with
I
yourself and with, God or whoever,
yes,
everybody's different. But
yes, yeah. And when I was in California, I used to go to San Juan Capistrano, and called um, there's a old Spanish church there, and I used to sing there. So I kind of, and in Italy, there's a favorite place that I have sung. It was 100-year-old chapel on this in this sort of restored villa retreat, and oh,
it sounds so amazing. It does.
yeah,
It sounds so
yeah,
amazing.
yeah,
So, oh wow. I had never even thought to do something like that. What a
yeah.
great
Try it,
idea.
try it sometime. It's very healing, very soothing. Yeah.
Yes. So, you have quite a bit of experience because as I was reading your bio, you've been married more than once. So you can speak from experience on how to get along. Because you want to
Yeah,
talk about that?
I do. Sure. Well, the first thing is it's kind of, in a way, it's kind of bizarre to think that you should study with or learn from someone who's been married 4 times, because I've
Four
been
times.
4 times. And, the only saving grace about all of that is, the question I ask myself, and that you should ask someone if you're working with them, is, did you learn? Because for a while, I don't really think I just didn't get it, but I turned my fourth marriage around. I had a sort of a 5-year pattern, and I could make a really good relationship go away in 5 years or less.
Okay. Oh my goodness.
I mean, in all honesty, let's just be real here. So I just didn't know what I was doing that caused that. And when I got to number 4, I mean, this was a man I really loved, really adored. We had started out beautifully, but it went the way of all others. And, it just completely there was just no way around the idea that, by that time I had to realize that it had nothing to do with the men, why I was getting divorced. I was creating that pattern each time, and I just didn't know what to do. So there was kind of an aha moment with Eric about that, which just turned everything around.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So what did you start doing differently, or how did you change your thinking? How do you turn something like that around? Because patterns are deep, and it sounds like we're in that same pattern for a very long time.
I was in several of them. The thing that occurred to me in that moment, Eric, can I just tell you what happened that morning? It was a Sunday morning, I remember, and I just kind of woke up and I thought everything was okay, It didn't seem to be any giant problem on the horizon or anything. And so I went to the kitchen to get some coffee, and when I came back, he was, I don't know, it looked like somebody had run into the bedroom when I was gone and decked him, and that he had lost the fight. I don't know. It was the weirdest thing. He was kind of slumped back against the bedpillows, and what he said to me, I said, I was kind of scared to ask, but but I said, because it looked terrible and I was probably to blame, So I said, what's going on? And he gave me one sentence. He said, "Are you done with me yet?" And nobody had ever said that to me in my life. And in that moment, fortunately, I assumed that it had to do with me. It probably had just as much to do with him and where he was with his life and all of that. But it's just not how I heard it in the moment. And so there was just this really intake. I don't know. I just remember just this epiphany of, oh my gosh, this is my doing. And let me see why that is. Let me see what it is that I do. So in that moment, I made a commitment to do whatever it took to figure that out, to be the person that I actually am, not to blame him for anything, not to point the finger ever. And if I started to blame or criticize or do something that wasn't really to the advantage of either one of us, that I would just stop. It was really an incredible moment. And so what I set about doing for the next 3 months was taking responsibility for everything I said and did, no matter where I went, with Eric and with other people, that nothing was ever anyone else's fault. Just try that shoe on for size for a while. It'll shift you. And it was an incredible exercise. So in 3 months, I went to some classes, I read books, I listened to CDs, I did all kinds of things. I asked every friend who was a dear friend, help me. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I went to teachers, and I went to therapists, and I did everything. I just, dove in.
Yes.
I really did. And that was different for me. I didn't ask him to do anything. He never read a book, never went to a class. Mm-hmm. I honestly, at that point, did not care whether he did anything, because it was my personal journey. And I figured, he's going to do whatever he does, but this is what I have to do.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Total responsibility.
Yeah. Which is the thing most of us don't do in a relationship. We've all, the couples that come see me, one of them or both of them, they have their foot out the door in some way. Like, well, but shouldn't we be talking to him about this, because this really involves him? Mm-hmm. Yeah. But I do this thing in sessions where I call it mouse in the corner. It is such a beautiful thing to do. Both people are there, and I open the session and we start, and we see who's kind of, the most upset about something that's generally where the conversation goes first. And then I say, you know, let's just say it's the woman. It's not always the woman, but let's just say it's the woman. And I turn to him. I like it when it's her first, because then he can watch what I'm doing and he will then trust me. So what I mean by that is I'll start working with her and I'll ask him to be mouse in the corner, which means that he draws no attention to himself. No, you know, with your voice, or no moving around or shifting or trying to kind of get into the conversation. He has to be like completely invisible. And so he makes an agreement to do that. And I say, so no sounds, no harumps, you know,
Faces.
and no faces. Yeah. Yeah, no faces. That's pretty. So then I start working with her. And when he sees that I don't let her blame him, I tell him that we're going to work as if he's not there. We're going to just completely ignore. So when he sees that I'm not taking sides, I mean, he starts to relax. And then he will, when it's his turn, I mean, you can just feel a man start breathing, you know, in very deep ways, like, oh, good, these are not two women against one guy. You know, it's not how it is. So he'll start to relax, and then he'll start telling the truth about, he'll really say stuff because he knows I can hear and that I will treat it well. What I tell women is, if you want the truth from a man, make sure you take very good care of whatever he hands you.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, my experience has been that men really don't want to talk about their feelings, aren't comfortable talking about their feelings. And so if they're even willing to come and be part of that whole situation,
Yeah.
be very respectful.
Yes, yes. And it's not my experience that they don't like talking about their feelings. They just don't want to get in trouble for how they feel.
Different.
It's a different thing. Like, is somebody going to try to fix me every time I talk about myself? Am I wrong for what I think? Is somebody going to jump all over me? Because if telling the truth becomes too much trouble, if it causes too much trouble, they'll just hold back.
Mm-hmm.
And it's out of respect, out of desire for harmony, out of, you know, I'm just going to leave you alone and we'll let this go your way. I mean, really, that's what that is. That's my experience with men. Yeah. Yeah. So that's how a session works. Yeah.
So I'm just wondering, just going back to that aha day.
Yeah.
When Eric made that statement, "Are you done with me yet?"
Yep.
So there's other people walking in to the bedroom or a situation where their partner or their spouse is giving them a statement like that. How did you respond to that? If someone gets a statement like that, obviously the person has said something that's profoundly important to them.
Yes.
Some aha they just had. So how does one respond if they find themselves in that situation?
Well, I'm not sure if I'm going to answer what you're asking me, so give me feedback. But what I did in that moment was I said, Eric, I can see you're really upset. And if you would do me this kind favor, which is do not go anywhere. Like, if you would just hang in there until things improve, because that's my intention, is I will go and learn about myself. And if you would be willing to do that, I would appreciate it deeply. Mm-hmm. And I require nothing except honest feedback from you. And I will ask you for help if that's okay. I'm going to ask you for help with how you heard something. I'm going to, instead of assuming that I know what you meant, I'm going to actually ask you. If I find myself upset about something, I'm going to just go, okay, if it's okay with you, I'd like to kind of do it out loud. I'd like to say, oh, Eric, I can feel my anger rising, you know, which is not something I would have done with him. Mm-hmm. I can feel it. So hold on. can you do you have a moment to just help me with this and just help me see what I'm doing, not what he did to me, but can you help me see what I'm doing and what I'm thinking? That's the kind of thing I would ask you for in this next time period. And oh my gosh, so he so did that. It was it was one of the most beautiful experiences. I had no idea that he could kind of, I don't know, reach deep down and do that. I didn't know that. We didn't know that about ourselves.
Yeah, and that's awesome. And that's so encouraging.
Yes.
So
Men they're so willing to do that. They're so willing to do that. But they just don't want to be aimed at all the time, which is what I did. I sort of put down my big guns. Apparently I had some. I didn't really think I did. I thought I was a very kind person, but I didn't see the ways that I criticized him that sort of, I had kind of learned criticism growing up, and it was a pattern in the family in certain ways. And it just sort of, you're impressionable when you're 5 and 6, you go, well, that's how life works and that's how you respond. And so I started doing that, but it's not really me. That's not really me. So everything changed when I sort of put all that stuff that I was doing in my basket. One of the things I talk to people about a lot is that if you're not getting along with someone, then you don't know yourself and you're not being who you actually are. Because in my marriage, if I'm not myself, what it will bring out of my partner is it'll bring out of him who he's not, and that will fight. My not me and his not me will fight. That's what's going on. So if I can adjust, correct, change, open, evolve my part of that equation, which is why I say it takes one person to change a relationship, because I did. If I do that, then it completely changes the dynamic between us. It makes, instead of me against him, he's no longer an enemy. He's a helper. He's my guy. He's got my back. He's helping me in ways that I've asked him to offer. I mean, it's just a sweet, deeply sweet thing. It changes from being on two, opposite sides, me against him, to partners standing next to each other.
Yes. And as you're talking, I was thinking of, I hear this more often than I'd like, people who are married, but they're kind of apathetic, but they raise the kids, and then as soon as the kids are out of the house, they divorce because they finish their responsibility. But at that point, I don't think either person really knows themselves at all. So if someone comes to you in that situation, they say, we've been kind of living in the same household, but I don't know who I am anymore apart from him or her. I don't know who I am apart from my children. How do you guide them?
I would have a session with each of them individually and just see what's going on, so I can really feel the landscape of what's happening between them. And then so it'd be a session with her, a session with him, and then the third session would be together. And I never know, there's probably a general answer I can give you, but each couple is so unique in terms of how they flow together or don't flow together. So I really base what I do for the fourth session, the third session actually, on what I learned from them individually. I've done everything from help couples get closer to have them separate for 6 months so that they can actually find out who they are. If they're really not able to do that together, let's say there's kind of a pattern of fighting and antagonism, and it's not just apathetic, it's a little Has a little more energy than that.
Yes.
So if it's, so depending on what's happening with them, you know, I guide them with assignments, with sometimes YouTube videos. I mean, it really, honestly, I do all kinds of things. I know so many resources and so many books and so many, you know, ways of helping someone. So I just kind of figure out a good combination to get them going.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And then on the opposite end, I've met people who their kids are getting to the point where they're going to be out of the house.
Yeah.
And they're planning stage 2 of what they're going to be doing together. And they're excited about living into this new way of being together. So what's the difference that you've noticed between the couples that are ready to separate at the end of their child rearing and the couples who are even more excited to stay together?
The difference is that the couple who's apathetic, they have practiced for quite a while not being themselves. Like they've just sort of compromised, and they've not been pursuing outside the marriage things that they could bring into the marriage to stimulate each other, you know, intellectually, socially, emotionally, physically. They're not being in the world who they could be, that would actually contribute to the two of them. And people who've kept up with, you know, finding out who they are, they do really well after the kids leave. It's like, yeah, let's you know, let's go here, let's go there, let's learn this together, let's go on separate vacations, let's go there together, you know, and give each other time to, you know, go off to a girlfriend's weekend, go off to a guy's whatever kind of hunting weekend, whatever. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so there's respect for being together as well as separate.
Right. And they're creating together. So they're doing
They are.
Separate. I know my parents have been married, oh my gosh, 50, February it will be 55 years, something like that.
Yeah.
And, you know, they both are, you know, of course, retired for a long time, but they both have their own golf clubs. My mom has her Bible study. My dad has his thing, but then they do things together. So they each have their own separate things that make them happy, but then they also create things together, and of course family. And I think that's really important, like you said, to keep growing and learning regardless of how old you are. Or
and keep growing and learning individually and bringing that back to the two of you. Mm-hmm. It's huge.
Because part of it could just be boredom. As we're talking, I'm thinking maybe some people are just bored, and
they are
because it's same old.
Yep, they are.
So back to the couple that are fighting. Why are they fighting? Is it because they just don't know themselves?
They don't. What happens, I just did a talk a couple weeks ago, and it was a pretty small group of people. It was 15 people, but like if I could pick any 15 people, they were wise and wonderful people with lots of life experience. And so we all sat around this table and talked about this thing called, well, what does it mean to stop being who you're not? Like if you are fighting with someone and you don't know yourself, what does that really mean? Like for you, what does that mean? And so each person, you know, anybody who wanted to contribute how they were not being themselves. Mm-hmm. And so it started to spawn this whole discussion that was really deep and wonderful. But that's one of the things I talk about a lot.
Mm-hmm. When there are actual problems, because problems come up, we're humans.
Sure.
Actual problems are coming up. How can that affect a relationship?
Problems can actually bring you closer. It's the thing.
Tell us more. Because when we're in the middle of it, it doesn't feel good.
No. So let me just give you an example of this couple who came to my office, they were so angry when they came. I'm not laughing about that, but just like in retrospect, to think about how pissed off they were. They had driven probably 15 or 20 miles to see me, and so they came in person. So a lot of sessions I do on Zoom or, but they wanted to come in person, and so they got it. I don't know how they made it in the car. I don't know for that many miles, because when they walked in, it was like stony silence, and I thought, oh, well, this is going to be interesting. And so they sat down, and I served them tea, and who would like to start, and so they were, he had a thing he was angry about, and I can be more specific, and so did she, and they were equal intensity. He had seen me a couple of weeks ago about past relationships. He wanted to sort of settle some things about what had happened with other women so that he could be more present with this beautiful woman that he was with now. That was his intention. Did he say that to her? No. So he asked her, after my session with him, he went home, and apparently he asked her for sort of time, quiet time, like downtime, like leave me alone time. I've got lots to think about. So he asked her for that, and she panicked, like, because he wasn't really terribly specific about it. He didn't go into details. She didn't have enough details to figure out why he was withdrawing. They were about to be a long distance relationship for a little while. He was leaving because of his work, so they were going to be apart. She was totally panicked that he was letting her down easy and was going to leave the relationship. So the whole thing that they came with that day was he had a belief about what she was doing, which is a whole longer story, and she had a belief about what he was doing, and it was not true. So they were angry about something that wasn't even accurate, which is what happens most of the time. Seriously, people are arguing about things that aren't even true. That's, if I could say that mostly the number one thing, it'd be that perception, how you interpret something, how she interpreted him and how he interpreted her. Perception guides conclusions. So she came to a conclusion based on what she thought was going on. But the problem was the perception was inaccurate. Mm-hmm. And then conclusions, that guides outcomes. And so it was just her outcome was feeling horrible to her, and vice versa. So.
Yes,
But by the end of the session, it took 2 hours. Mm-hmm. Not 10 years, not 5 years, not a year. It took 2 hours. And at the end of the session, she turned to him and she said, because by that time they really understood what was at play. She said, "So you're not breaking up with me?" And they started to laugh, and his hand slid over to her hand, and they just held hands for like the whole last 20 minutes, Anyway, I just wanted to say that.
I love that.
It was so sweet. Yeah. This happens a lot.
Yeah. Well,
yeah.
I love that happens a lot, because
yeah.
it doesn't always happen. So if it happens a lot, it
happens a lot. Yes.
So,
and they got engaged and they got married.
Okay.
And they're doing really well.
Oh, that's great. So
yeah.
She doesn't have to worry anymore.
No.
That's awesome. So sometimes we have relationships where sometimes it's couples, but sometimes with another person where we're arguing and someone's just kind of on a circuit. You know what I mean? There's like, especially if people start to have a temper, or they're just starting to get angrier and angrier, and you think to yourself, haven't we had this fight 3 times in the past? But this person has their fixed ideas and this person has their fixed ideas, and they're just, every time they come at each other and they really do want to solve it, but he doesn't let go, she doesn't let go, and they're just going in those circles
Yeah.
and patterns.
Yeah.
How can someone break that if they're noticing it? Because I know I've noticed it in my life with people, and they're not listening to me, or they're just saying the same thing over again. I don't want to hear it again.
So what did you try?
I just leave the conversation.
You just leave the conversation. Okay. So do you want to know how I would coach you?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So I would have you, instead of, so tell me the state, tell me the main place that you're coming to when you don't want to hear it anymore and, you walk away. What is the general state that you're in?
So
frame of mind.
I tend to be the more peaceful person because I don't like fighting. So
yeah.
It's just, I think to myself, I'm giving up because this person is saying the same thing. It's not productive. I'm wasting my time. I'm just going to leave because I don't really feel like having this anger coming towards me. So I'm just going to leave the situation so I don't have to feel the anger, since there's no solution here.
Right. And that may be a totally legitimate thing to do, some of the time, part of the time, whatever. But if you want to change the situation, what I do in those situations, because I've had clients do that, they're like on a rampage in the session. Really, truly. And they know they are, and they know I'm sitting there watching and that I'll help them. And so it's a good thing. I said, don't ever edit yourself. Don't ever try to calm yourself down. Just tell me, tell me however you want to tell me. But how I would coach you is to become curious. It's a lost quality. And if you're fighting, somebody's not curious. Like if Eric was on a rampage, I would say, I'm sure there's something I'm not hearing about this. And so do you mind if I ask you a question? You always ask permission.
Okay.
because it opens their heart and it opens yours. So may I ask you a question? I'm not sure I understand everything you're saying. There must be something I don't understand, because I've heard you say this before, but you're saying it again, so I must not get it. I'd really like to get it. So it has to do with receiving the person. I would coach you on receiving instead of resisting, because what you're doing is resisting. It's like, I've heard that, I don't want to hear that anymore. Yeah. So it's something I talk about in I'm working on working on my second book, and it's a book about relationships that's going to have most of my work in it and philosophies and that kind of thing. And so one of the chapters is on receiving, like, how do you do that?
Wow.
When
is your book coming out? Your new book?
It's probably early next year.
Okay.
I'm working on the editing right now. I just got it back from the developmental editor, so now I'm fixing things. Yeah,
very exciting.
Yes.
So I'm going to ask you something personal. So
Sure.
What has given you the most joy and fulfillment in your life? And what is most joyful for you right now?
Well, I mostly what gives me joy is evolving, learning. I love that. I totally love that. So I do that every day. So I love writing. I've written some poetry, and I'm doing some of that. So writing is very fulfilling to me. And because Eric passed away, I don't think I said that at the beginning. That's a hard thing. Anyway, he died in 2017, and I keep thinking, that it won't bother me as much, after just time has passed, but it's just such a deep thing. It's such a deep thing. And I am honestly enjoying getting back out in the world. I've taken a lot of time to myself. This is almost 3 years, but I'm getting back out there, and with a lot of joy and a lot of curiosity and a lot of lightheartedness. You know, even I'm a very deep feeling kind of person. So sure, grief comes up, and how much I love that other way with Eric, you know, it'd be fun to have that back, but it's not here. And so this is what I, you know, change. Oh, change. You know, change feels really strange. And it feels strange at my age to be, first I was angry about it. Like, how dare you leave me here? You know, it's like, what were you thinking? But now it's like, okay, so I get it. I don't have a husband anymore. I'm on my own. And how shall I do this? Mm-hmm. So I have a deeply satisfying time these days. I don't feel lonely. I don't feel lost. I don't feel, it's none of that. It's like, well, what shall I do now? You know? Mm-hmm. So I'm grateful for what grief has taught me.
Yes.
Yeah.
Very difficult. I've gone through that too. So
yeah,
very difficult, and it takes a long time.
It takes a long time.
Wow.
It keeps way longer than we wish. Yeah.
So when you first started getting yourself out there into the world,
yeah,
how did you do that? Did you connect like with your church or with people you knew, or how did you kind of, because I know I went through that, just like it just seemed like forever before I would even go out.
Did your partner die?
Yes.
I didn't know that. Oh, wow.
So
I'm going to send you my poetry book. We have to connect. I'm going to send you my book.
Okay.
Because it's about all of, it's called 100 Words, and it's small servings of whimsy and wisdom. And it's about relationships. It's about grief. It's about loss. It's about love. It's about creativity, all of that. I'll send it to you.
Well,
yeah.
Thank you. Yeah.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
For other people who would like to get that book, where is that available?
In careofrelationships.com.
Okay.
You can get a signed copy from me that way.
Oh,
yeah.
And that's where a lot of your other things are that you offer too. So
they are.
Why don't you tell people what things that are available now, how they can work with you?
You were asking me another question though that I started. You said when I was getting back out there, what did I do? And I didn't actually finish that. I should.
That's right. Okay.
Because it's kind of a key question for someone in our situation, you know. So I did go to my church. I belong to a Unity church, and it's a pretty big church. And so those people knew me and loved me, and I knew that, you know, so I could always go there. I spent, you know, my writing was kind of my boyfriend for a while. I have to say, I don't know how I could have done it otherwise. But it was mostly through my church, and my friends all knew me and took very good care of me, you know, and they would just gradually started to invite me to go to things. And then I still remember the day I went to something all by myself. You know, sounds very silly to think that's such a big deal, but it is. After you know, it's a really big deal if you've been, you know, hiding in your house for a while. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a huge deal. Yeah.
It's a huge deal. Yeah. So then I'll answer your other question about how people can find things. So my website is called incareofrelationships.com, and I have an upcoming seminar in Asheville on what time? January 16th in Asheville. For details, I'll post it on Facebook, and Care of Relationships on Facebook and I'll do a Facebook event. But it's called How to Improve Your Relationships by Looking Within. Improve your relationships by looking within. And I do talk about this thing about, you know, stop being who you're not. and a few other wonderful things. My book is available. The current book is available on the website. And if you want to know about the upcoming book, the publication date for that, if you want to be notified so that you can get it, write to incareofrelationships@gmail.com. Just be in touch with me that way. And I have a couple of holiday gifts for December and January coming up. If an individual signs up for a package of sessions, it's usually $5.95, and during December and January, I'm offering it for $4.95, so it's $100 less. And for couples, instead of $12.95, it's $11.95.
Awesome.
Yeah. So it's just a nice savings. And if you would like a single session, I don't usually do single sessions, but if somebody wants to do that in December or January, I'm going to offer it for 2 months, December and January. You can get a single session for $100.
Okay, good.
And it's an hour and a half. It's a good luxurious amount of time. So
yes,
that's what's up.
That is so awesome.
Yeah.
So any last words on how to create the most incredible life for people with their relationships, with themselves?
Oh, final words. I didn't really think about that. Well, I help people get along with those they love. That's what I say that I do. And so I would say that how we see something, how we interpret something is so much more important than the event itself. And if you want to take it to an extreme, it's like, how did I interpret Eric's death? You know, if you want to just take it all the way to that side, because there's a range, I could see that as something being taken away from me. I could see it as something to be bitter about. Why I could be a victim about. There's so many ways that I could interpret that not to my benefit. And sure, I might go through those feelings, but as long as I don't get stuck along the way, if I just keep the river moving, which I did through writing and connecting with friends, it becomes just the most incredible gift. I learned so much from him not being here. And that's a whole story in itself, you know. So this fight that I had with a partner, or this difficulty with my friend, it's so much more than it seems. If it's a fight, then I'm not being myself. How can I be myself? And what kind of gold is waiting there? What kind of treasure is there for me in that situation that I can't see? And if I can learn to see that, that's an incredible gift, because I'll learn it and pass it on.
Yes, it is. It's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for all your wisdom on relationships. Oh my gosh, I've learned so much just listening and interacting with you, and just thanks for what you're putting out into the world, and also for your generosity with, the offer you have for December and January. So thank you so much for being on the podcast.
Thank you. I look forward to knowing you even more.
All right.
And thanks to everyone listening. I appreciate your time and your attention, and be loving today.
All right. We'll talk to you again soon.
All right. Thank you.